Well, we're here with Jacob Hester and Chris Doering, a couple of SEC personalities and experts. Guys, I got to ask you about Georgia football. I know they're not here, but the Bulldogs still on everyone's minds. They have just completed a season where they're ranked number 5. Jake Fromm's going pro. Jacob, we'll start with you. Just kind of your overarching thoughts on Georgia football, where they're at.
I still think they've got Jimmys and Joes all over the place. I know you'd agree, CD. They've got a great coaching staff, and their defense is coming back, going to have a solid defense. And now you get a grad transfer quarterback possibly, right, with Jamie Newman from Wake Forest. That adds another dimension. Jake Fromm, I'm a big fan of Jake Fromm. But right now when you look at this offense, I think that gives it a little bit extra juice. And we know that you're going to have some receivers step up and probably play better in this season. You're always going to have a good running back at Georgia. I think if Georgia can continue to evolve that offense, they'll be just fine.
I'll be honest with you. Heading into the season, I thought Jake Fromm was going to be one of those guys like Tua Tagovailoa that will play 3 years and go on to the NFL. But after watching the way that offense struggled, he struggled in terms of his accuracy, which he's always been known for, and his decision-making, which I thought was a little slower this year. I thought he needed to come back. Listening to the arguments and him, he's not going to get any bigger, so he's not going to be able to overcome that. It also leads me to believe that maybe there's some discontent when it comes to the comfort level of what that offense and James Coley's doing right now. So I do think between that and some of the departures on the offensive line, there is some concern, at least in my book, about what's happening behind the scenes there.
Jacob, you adding a dual threat quarterback, you mentioned Jamie Newman a second ago. Just how much of a game changer can that be for Georgia, do you feel?
Look, as long as you have a quarterback that can still throw the football and be accurate, but he can run also. Now, I don't think you want to have a guy that specializes in running the football.
As a receiver, I can tell you we don't want to do that.
Exactly,
That's
right.
The worst nightmare for us.
The two quarterbacks here, look, Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence, people don't give them credit for their legs. I mean, they can be dual threat quarterbacks when they have to be. Now, obviously, they can throw the football down the field as good as anybody, but having that added layer to your offense, having the ability when it's 3rd and 8 to pick up 9 yards on the defense, that's demoralizing for them. It's that thing they hate the most more than anything, when a quarterback can get out of the pocket and pick up a first down with his legs. I think it just adds something extra for the coordinators to have to prepare for.
Chris, I want to ask you about those scramble plays. And we see Joe Burrow. How does that work? Where does that come from? I mean, so much of it seems like it's, happenstance during the game, but can you talk about how receivers can develop into good scramble receivers after plays break down?
Well, I think first of all, as I mentioned before, nothing more frustrating as a receiver to run your route, come out of your break, and see a quarterback running past the line of scrimmage. I think what Joe Burrow does well, and Trevor Lawrence as well, they both do a good job of scrambling while keeping their eyes up. And as receivers, think about it, it's tough for guys to cover for 4, 5, 6 seconds. LSU's made a living out of it, and I think what it does is not only puts pressure on the contain up front, but the secondary players, there's a ton of pressure in trying to cover for prolonged periods of time.
Jacob, I'll ask you about my final question for you guys about the Georgia defense. They bring back 9 of the 11 guys that started in that Sugar Bowl win. Just your thoughts, could that be the best defense in the country next season with what they have back, and what would they need out of an offense to be paired with a championship defense?
Well, it already was. I mean, basically one of the best, if not the best defense in the country this year. You mentioned 9 of the 11 coming back. That's only going to get them another year under their belt. I think Georgia, in their defense, put them right back in the conversation to be a top team in the country and one of the top teams, if not the top team in the SEC East. And so when you look at maybe changing some of the offense, that's going to be the question mark, because you have to learn to play with a new style of offense. LSU went through that. LSU, the first couple of games of the year, all of a sudden their team's scoring in bunches. They don't have time to even make adjustments, and the defense was on the field way more than they ever have been before. And so you have to really learn how to play defense with that style of offense. But with Kirby Smart and that personnel, I think they'll be fine.
It is crazy to think about 9 of 11 starters back on defense, but you lose 9 of 11 starters on the offensive side. You lose your quarterback, who's been that kind of veteran leader there. The offensive line has been a strength. I know they got a ton of offensive line guys they've been able to recruit to at a high level. So it's just a matter of inexperience. And the great part about it, I'd rather have a defense, and this is weird for me to say, I'd rather have a defense that can keep teams in check while the offense is kind of learning and getting their feet under them, than vice versa, where the defense is unproven and the offense is the one that's having to carry the weight.
Because look at it, what's really going to be different from this year, right? In Georgia, their defense kept them in most football games, and their offense at times stood up and did enough. The Florida game, the offense came out and had a really good game plan. On 3rd down, they couldn't be stopped. And so the defense can start things off. The offense just has to get there at some point to finish it.